innovation and the work of Innotribe. Innovation, as everybody has been saying at this conference, critical for growth, and nowhere in the financial industry, financial services industry, have we seen this more evident than in the work of Innotribe. And throughout this week at Sibos, as you've just seen with that package before, it's been a collaborative environment. If you've popped into their space, you'd have seen all the very interesting things. I mean, bean bags and drums and Reputone, their own new currency. It was fascinating for me. And we're now joined by a group of, they told me, troublemakers. Here they are, all 8 of them. So I'm going to take you through each of them very quickly. Lazaro Campos, you all know as the CEO of Swift. Then next to him, Doc Searles. He is an alumnus fellow at the Berkman Center for Internet and Society at Harvard University. Thierry Michalski is the founder of REXpedition. Tony Fish, next to him at the end, is the CEO of AMF Ventures. And then we're going to come back here to me just behind Lazaro is Sean Park. He is the founder and executive chairman of Anthemis Group. Also with us is Stowe Boyd. He is an independent researcher and author. Thierry Touchais is the executive director at International Polar Foundation, and Kosta Peric, last but not least, all in the back there, head of innovation at Swift. Gentlemen, nice to have you with us. I'm going to start first with Lazaro. Why is all of this? I mean, gosh, look, we've got your flag, we've got all the things that you've been doing today on the board. We have Reputones. I want to hear all about what you guys have been winning and spending throughout the week. So why is this so important to set something like this up at Swift and Sibos?
Innovation. We started this journey 3 years ago in a dark room, not dissimilar to the ones we just went through. And the whole idea was to instigate innovation at Swift and at the industry level. At Swift, because we truly believe that operational excellence and innovation are not, as we said earlier, contradictory, and that they all work together. And at the industry level, because the fear is that banks are being disintermediated by newcomers. Newcomers that bring in different ways and new ways of serving the customer. And what we want to do here is to create a platform in which banks meet innovators and move on to develop their services and be more customer-centric.
I mean, earlier we were talking to some of these new disruptive technology providers, and I asked them, do we still need some of the traditional players? And they were very direct. They say we need Swift, but maybe not. We may not need all these other players. What's your view on that?
I think that at the end of the day, collaboration is the answer to most things. And even we've seen some of the very new emerging schemes like PayPal and others, at some point they touch the banking industry. Clearing and settlement mechanisms are the same for everybody. So I think that the combination of both is the right answer. But for that, speed needs to change. And new collaboration ways need to be found in ways that everybody benefits. And at the end of the day, is customers who would have the last vote.
Okay, I want to get to some of the areas that you've been tackling in the Innotribe room. And I know, Doc, you have been involved in the area of social data, why it's important for the financial industry. Just tell us a little bit about your work.
Okay, well, I'll tell you more about social data first, which is to say that all of us are throwing off an enormous amount of data all the time. And the larger trend that's going on that's not much talked about yet is how much of that data is going to come into personal use. So all of us will have much more to say about how that data is used and how much business that creates. So the long-term trend is that demand is going to start driving supply more than supply right now imagines in many cases that it's driving demand. And so, like right now, for example, with advertising, there's a lot of data going into the advertising mills which are very, very inefficient. At some point, the demand that we have as individuals, whether that's within a social group or not, that I need this now, is going to find its way back through the banking system and back through the infrastructure that's already in place, and require new services and new players, new providers, new kinds of businesses of all kinds.
And Jerry, you've been focused on new economies. Tell everybody about that.
Sure. Well, we've kind of squished a lot of value. This whole week has really been about expanding and better understanding and measuring and tracking sources of value, and that's part of where the Reputones came in for us, right? So the relationships between things like the dollar and wealth have shifted. I heard a really nice quote a couple weeks ago: wealth is what you have if you lose all your money. And that gets you started thinking about social capital, about community, about passion and joy, and part of the reason for the funny furniture and sort of the happy vibe is that play is a really important part of all that. So a lot of relationships are shifting, and there are many metaphors for what are we coming into? What is this new economy? Because we have to think of it through some sort of metaphor. Doc is a past master of George Lakoff's kind of work in metaphors, like, is life a journey? Is it a vessel or a container? Where are we right now? And I think that the primary thing here is relationships, and that means things like trustworthiness, authenticity, and a word that's very scary to every company, which is vulnerability.
Okay, well, on that note, we're going to move over to Tony, because he's been in the era of digital identity. So tell us about some of the work that you've been doing in that area.
So digital identity is one of the questions that Swift's been posing, and what can you do with digial identity? And the simple answer is digital identity provides an opportunity, both for Swift and the wider banking industry. Kosta and the Innotribe have dragged together a gang, and they called it the Identity Gang, and said, what can we do with identity? As a base question, and hoping and seeking out some of the scenarios that Docs has presented and such like, which is social data. What we came to a conclusion was actually there's an infrastructure play. And the infrastructure is knowing where the data exists, where the rights exist, and where the identity exists. How can you combine those together and be one of the infrastructure players that helps the bank and the wider ecosystem to create more value for its customers? So digital identity, opportunity.
Digital identity, opportunity, big data, I'm going to go to Vishal. How can they make all of this into useful information?
Yeah, so big data is a term that sort of emerged over the last year or two and become popularized and describes this new world where you're talking about not thousands or tens of thousands or hundreds of thousands of lines of code or data. You're talking about billions and trillions and Googles of data. And the next hot career, I think, in the next 10 years in banks and financial services institutions is going to be data scientists. How do we use all this data? And the irony is that the banks and financial services companies are natively digital businesses. They trade in zeros and ones in data, and yet they've been some of the slowest to really, and part of his regulation, part of his history, to really embrace what can you do with that data and use that to, not against your customers, but to enhance the services that you give to them across the spectrum, from retail banking all the way through institutional and transactional services. And what is absolutely amazing is that, this is Moore's Law, it's not new to anyone, but really you need to have it sink in how the cost in the space of a decade, we're not talking about a generation, goes down by an order of 1,000 many times.
And Sto, you've been working on the area of culture, and tell us how impactful this has been for the new world going forward.
Well, it's a time of great change, and the culture of the banking industry, for example, one of the things we spend a lot of time talking about here is how the internet has changed so many industries dramatically from top to bottom. Media, for example. It's been kind of delayed for banking. It hasn't had the same impact yet, but we believe, many of us here, that the same sort of top to bottom upheaval is coming for banking, and seeing some of the demos here of handheld banking devices make me wonder if hundreds of thousands of banking professionals might be looking for a new job. So it's clear that the organizations are going to change how they organize, how they work, and that's going to have very large systematic impacts.
I think it's a very interesting analogy, and I heard it with the gentleman earlier as well, making that analogy between what's happened in the media industry with the internet and how that has really shifted. I mean, I see it myself, how it's shifted in the world of television, in the world of newspapers. I mean, you're even getting people in the newspaper industry now, certain CEOs have said to me, we're going to stop printing our paper because it's about 51% of our costs. So that's very amazing that you will have a situation where a newspaper stops printing the newspaper, but it's still going on as a media business.
The one-liner to take away is that those businesses have been turned inside out completely, and we certainly haven't even seen the beginning of that for banking.
Sure. Well, I want to get to the banking for a better world, because that's what Thierry's work is all about, and that is some title. And I have to say, earlier the gentleman that we were speaking to was saying that, we don't need, we could create our own banks for a better world. Would you agree with them?
Possibly. The point is well-being for people is multidimensional, and you cannot simplify and say it's only a base of wealth and financial data. So you have also things like health or education, and Everything, though, is related to some financial level of services where many people in the world do not have access. And the question is, within the ecosystem, sort of the traditional banking system, aside you have another ecosystem which is the social financial services or social banking system or alternate banking system, we may call it, and there is a representation here behind. But the point is that those two ecosystems live side by side with very few windows to each other. And there is a lack of clarity in the sense that people need to understand, to define better roles and responsibilities and build bridges between those two systems. Because at the end of the day, what should be the good world or the better world is a world where everyone has access to some level of financial services to improve their
And Kosta, let me just ask you as well that there's a massive celebration that's going on. I think there's going to be a lot of noise here soon. Tell us what's been happening and what is everyone celebrating?
Right, so there is a lot of things happening as we speak in the Innotribe space. That we are having an unconference at the moment. And
we're just going to get you to change mics. Yeah.
Oh, okay, sorry about that.
Yeah.
So there is a lot of things happening there. We are running an unconference as we speak. And then at 2 o'clock, there is something very special indeed that's going to happen, a parade, where all of the things that we have just mentioned, the people who have been working, because there are only 6 of them here, but there is lots more there, in that room. So they will show the results of the week in a very, very colorful parade and celebration.
And I want to ask you about the Reputones, because Martine was here earlier this week from Innotribe. She was telling me all about your new currency. Who's been playing the game? What have you won? Tell me.
I actually used Reputones in order to buy a shiatsu massage, which I converted into a gift. So I converted a virtual currency into a gift in a gift economy.
Any of you winning any Reputation? You've got some there.
We've got a couple over here.
Yeah. What have you been using them for?
We've been rewarding people for good ideas, for good facilitation, for good performance, for good contribution to the conversation. It's just a way of making more visible some of that.
And I know, Lazaro, you haven't been winning any Reputations.
No,
I'm going to give you mine. I'm going to give you mine. You can hang
got
on
a million
to
to start with. That was the only way I would allow Reputones here.
You could go now and have a shiatsu massage. That might just get you enough.
But why don't I give it to you?
I want to get some final comments from all of you as to, 2012, when we all hopefully I'll be with you then, when we all meet in Osaka, what do you expect to have moved on from the discussions that we've had here? I'm going to start with you, Lazaro, first of all.
I think what we just saw here is that there is a lot happening, a lot of drives in different areas that have an impact on banking, that have an impact in the way people want to receive their financial services. And that's what we're trying to connect the dots on. So what I'd like to see is that Osaka, we are not talking about what we are doing within Sibos, but we are talking about the success of what we launched in Toronto that now is seeing the light of day and really delivering value to customers somewhere before Osaka.
I think it's important to understand that it's very, very early right now. The internet, which is the biggest change we've experienced in our lifetimes, is maybe 16 years old, the commercial internet. And we're just beginning to experience some of what the ramifications of those are. There will be, in a year from now, many more businesses of new kinds than we have now. There will be many more things that standing businesses such as banks and financial institutions will be doing a year from now than they're doing now.
Just to pick up on what Doc said, you know how on your keyboard sometimes you use the Control-Z to undo? Yeah. Like, there's no big undo key for society and for all the institutions we have. We're sort of stuck where we are, but we need to undo a lot of things that are stuck. And what's happening right now is the ability to do that has shown up. We can now share information for free. We can complain against companies that don't treat us well. All sorts of new things are in the air that didn't exist 20 years ago, and that's causing fundamental change everywhere.
Final comment from you, Tony.
I think what we're going to start to see is a separation of words, and we'll start to look at purchasing behavior, we'll start to look at payment behavior, and we'll start to look at banking behavior, and how social hits each of those three. And when we start to define where it's going to hit as silos as such, we're going to start to get an understanding and common words, then we can have the discussion about where it's going to go in the future.
Well, unfortunately, I'm being told we have to leave it there, everyone, but I am going to be here at 2 o'clock. I want to see what all this fuss is going to be about. Do I get to join in the parade?
Oh, yes.
Absolutely, thanks. And I gave you my Reputone, so enjoy your massage. Okay, thanks very much to all of you, Lazaro Campos and the innovators at Innotribe.